Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Data Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Vinny Leach, Head of Data at Yorkshire Building Society, and we're going to be discussing how to build an effective data team. How are you doing, Vinny?
Good, thank you, Richard. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Just start off as always. What's been your sort of route into data, and what's been your journey so far?
Okay, well, I started off as a software developer a long time ago, then moved into project management, program management, so delivering programs which were technology, business, all underlying supported by data. I think it's just been there as a thread right the way through, then actually focusing on architecture and then data management. And some of these projects that I've been involved in and deliveries I've involved in have involved data management, strategic changes within the strategy where we're looking to transform the way that data is consumed by the organisation. So it's been a thread of something that's been there for quite some time to where I am now, and Yorkshire Building Society, where I manage a team of 37 people from multidisciplined roles, from data architects, data design, and analysts, BI developers, and domestic data governance analysts.
Literally the full range then.
Full range, and
busy.
then I think we'll be getting another 12 from the data provisioning team as well. So that would give us an end-to-end data ops capability within the team.
What was it? You started off as a software developer as well, interestingly. What made you make the move into data? What sort of enticed you about that change?
It's been a bit of a gradual progression. Part of me always wanted to explore different angles of what I'm delivering. So whether that's you learn about the coding side of things, to gathering business requirements, through to developing front-end design that you that you put in front of your customer, through to actually the underlying infrastructure that something will sit on. So I'm happy. It's good for me to actually know how everything hangs together. So you're then aware of the constraints, the dependencies, the risks that you're working with to a delivery, whether that's right at the beginning where you're working with the customer and dealing with their strategy and why they're doing something, through to the technical constraints as to what network capacity how that can impact the latency and performance of that data throughput.
Yeah, all connected together, so you sort of gravitated towards that and then moved into leadership as well.
I think from the other angle on the data side of things is that I outside of work, I chose to invest some of my time in a law degree and an international business law, which is completely well away from the techie world that I know.
Wow, yeah.
But that gave me a much greater consideration of the legal ramification around data protection, around governance, that you don't normally get when you're kind of just in your day-to-day program delivery, operational team management roles that I've been running before. So it kind of gave me that breadth of understanding that end-to-end role. The data, you need to respect it. From a customer's perspective, it's mine, it's yours, it's somebody else's, and I want somebody who's looking after my data to be using it for the right purposes, not exploiting it.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. Not many people have that appreciation. That's something they have to learn along the way, but it's obviously a massive thing that needs to be thought about from the absolute start of the process now. And I was going to ask, who's Vinny outside of data? You've already mentioned that you've taken on, law degree, that sort of thing. I also know that when we first started speaking, you mentioned a number of other sort of I suppose responsibilities outside of just your data role as well. Just give us a bit of background about that.
Yeah, well, I'm a mum outside of work. and inside work as well. These days, it tends to run in every so often and join the conversation. I do martial arts outside of
Wow.
work to keep it's mostly to keep my head.
Stress management.
It really is to keep my head in gear, because you can't really lose focus when you're training with somebody, otherwise you're liable to get hit in the face. So really do have to concentrate on what's happening in the here and now. And I also volunteer for a couple of non-profit organisations. One's a higher education establishment, and the other one is one that focuses on sports, exercise and sciences. Quite varied roles,
That's cool.
but it's really interesting being involved in organisations that really have got nothing to do with the industry that I work in, because it brings different perspectives on different ways of thinking. We've got one organisation really creative in the way that it works, so that creativity shines through from the people that are working there. And the other one is very analytical in what they're trying to do and achieve in terms of those scientific ambitions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you find the time to do all that, to be fair, which is even more appreciative that you're getting involved today. But going into what we want to speak about then, when we had our initial conversation, one of the things that is sort of consistent throughout your career is building data teams, but not only building data teams, actually building efficient data teams that work in the right way, which is obviously really, really key. What does efficiency look like to you?
I think for me, and it will depend on people and on the teams that we're talking about, the composition, the roles, and what their objectives are. I think to start off with YBS, I managed the data architects and data analysts, which was relatively straightforward because we kind of had a much greater appreciation of each other's roles. So those two particular areas, they worked really well. And I think what's happened is over time, I've taken on board the BI developers, and we've built a new capability around metadata governance. And what we're finding is that for these guys and gals to be efficient, you've got to really understand each other's roles and what part they play in that journey from having a conversation with the business stakeholders on what their problems are, through to understanding where the data is, does it exist, is it integrated, is it available, and what do you actually need to then put forward in front of those customers to say, has the change been successful? Have you got the metrics right? What do we need to operate this change? I think each one of those roles, if they don't understand, they don't appreciate, there's then a lack of respect, and if there's a lack of respect, there's a lack of trust. So all of those things are quite intertwined, and I think one of the key things for me was to make sure that people understood where they fit in all of these changes, and then they had some exposure as to what each team was doing.
Yeah, really, really important point. And how do you even, because lots of teams naturally over time have not been set up like that for years, and that may have been, obviously the case at YBS, but how do you go about making that change and doing it in the right way? I
think for me it was getting that structure right within the team and having my team leads understand each other's roles, and if I've got the structure in place and I've got the right people in place and the right attitudes and the right behaviours, then it becomes so much easier, because what they will do is then demonstrate those right behaviours, the right thinking to their teams as well, and then it makes it that the environment then becomes about learning and all going off in the same direction, but also gently challenging each other. Because we're not going to grow and learn if we don't challenge the way that we're doing things, because we're not always going to get everything right first time around. And there will be better ways of doing something. So one is you've got to kind of the trust and respect. The other is just a little bit of challenge as to how we can all be a bit better.
Yeah, seeing that different perspective from someone in a different role, a different part of the chain that can make the difference. And was that, when you're making that transition, was there naturally, I suppose there might be a little bit of pushback from a change in approach, or was everyone, you know what, that makes sense, you know, and goes with it?
I think there was some hesitance, but change can be a bit scary, particularly when you're used to doing things in a certain way. For me, trying to overcome that was through giving everybody a bit of this is the direction that we're going in. So this is the strategy. This is what we're trying to achieve. And this is the goal that we're trying to reach. And by giving them that direction, it helped visualize where we could be as opposed to where we are.
Yeah. So important to take people on that journey, lay it out for them, get them bought in, to make sure they do their part in it, basically. But obviously makes a lot of sense, that approach, and naturally there's going to be some challenges, especially when you're looking at bigger, complex teams. But what were some of those challenges for you?
I think people sometimes get stuck in a way of doing things. And it's giving them different options, different ways of doing something a bit more efficiently. So when you're really busy, you kind of get into a mindset of being very reactive. And to be proactive, you need to build a little bit of breathing space to then be able to plan ahead and say, right, okay, this is what's coming down from our projects. This is what we've got to do in terms of our operational systems, and our data warehouse needs a little bit of love and attention. We need to go back and design a few things. We've got some wonderful technologies that we're not exploiting fully. We've got some virtualization technology we've got here, but we could be doing more with it. But to think about that proactive side of things, you've got to be able to give people a bit of breathing room. And that's been the challenge, is trying to give people the breathing room and space to think ahead while they're dealing with their day jobs.
It's a massive challenge for me in recruitment is to try and avoid being too reactive when you are in those really busy periods, and making that time to plan. And is it as simple as putting it in the diary and sticking to it, or is there anything else that you've seen work? I'm asking for me.
I don't know. I think it's try and get on top of your day to day, but knowing that that's always going to be there. Let's put in some specific sessions around the things that we want to change. So last year there was a lot of focus on data virtualization, and that was right. Okay, we're going to carve out little bits of time in our diaries to go, this is what we're trying to achieve. Pull a multidisciplinary team together from within my team, but also with members outside. And the team have done a brilliant job. They've kind of gone, great, this is something that we think can give us benefit. We can actually work together across the disciplines to make it beneficial for us. And I think if you don't have the proactive attitude as to this is where we want to be, it doesn't matter about carving time. So you could put meetings in diaries and say this is where we're going to go, but if the attitude isn't there, if the willingness isn't there,
how effective is that going to be?
No. So I think that you've got to have the right people, and I think I'm really fortunate to have a brilliant team. Yeah.
No, and like you linking it to mindset there, that's obviously really key, and it sounds like you're trying to install that mindset from the get-go at YBS as well. Communication is obviously something that is absolutely key when it comes to efficiency in teams. What's your approach to that, and how do you set your team up?
I think for me, part of my job is to help them understand where they fit within the wider organisation strategy. So talk to them about what we're doing and how it ties back to the YBS strategic blueprint and what our component parts are. Sometimes it gets really difficult because you end up thinking you're a back office function. Some of the team are actually a bit more front facing and customer facing, so they've got a bit more visibility. But each of them has a part to play. So you've got to figure out a way to make sure what they do always ties back to what we're delivering from a strategic perspective, or even more fundamental than that, keeping the business running. Because without keeping the business running, there is no strategic blueprint to deliver.
Yeah, exactly.
There's that part of it, but the other in terms of that communication side is having regular conversations with my team members and making it an honest conversation where they can challenge me on things that they don't think are quite right. Or there's a better way of doing something. Again, having those conversations within the team, but then taking that a layer down and go, right, okay, if any of your team want to have skip level meetings and we want to have a chat about, they want to have a chat with me about what we're doing, why we're doing, any concerns that they've got. We don't want to make this a hierarchical team. It's not. Everybody should be comfortable in having a voice that can say something and people are going to listen.
Yeah, really important to have that sort of culture within the team, 100%. I think it's interesting that you're saying, even when it's yourself talking to them in terms of challenging, your views or your direction that you want to go into, to obviously see a different opinion and a different approach, which could help the team as a whole. So, really important. How important is sort of buy-in as well around the business? So thinking about wider than just the individual teams, but actually those outside of data.
It's significant, and I think that's where it gets trickier because my team, we're all in this together. This is the direction we want to go in. I think sometimes data gets lost between where the business wants to go and then jumping straight to technology solutions, and you kind of go, oh yes, there's a bunch of data here that we need to actually support that solution that we're putting in place. Otherwise, here you go, is a bit of tech for you without any substance behind it. So I think we've made a lot of progress, and the team have done a really good job in talking to our stakeholders right at the beginning of big transformation changes, and that's kind of one of the key areas where we've made quite a bit of progress, particularly in the digital space, around having our architects working with the business engagement teams right off the bat to start thinking about what data do you need? Do you have it? Is it available? Do we need to integrate it? Is it a third-party system that we're bringing in? And also thinking broader than just the change that we're making right here. So if we're making a change for our savings products, is it something that is that needs to be thought about for our mortgage products? Because there is a crossover in data. Customer data is going to be crossover where you've got customers that have got mortgage and savings products. So we've got to think about the broader sense of that design and not just think about the specific right there up front for that particular project. And we've gone out and tried to engage people, and I think we've done a pretty good job around what benefits it's going to provide by having
that's the key,
thinking around this, and what each of these roles are as well, because it can get complicated. If I've had to speak to and work with the teams so they understand each other's role, I can imagine the business is going to get really confused as to what difference between a data analyst and the data modeler is versus a BI developer and somebody who's working in the data governance team. So it can get complicated. So part of it is kind of having these conversations with our business stakeholders, our customers, to explain the differences, the nuances, and what each of these roles gives them in terms of the problem that they're trying to solve.
Yeah, improving that data literacy all round makes a massive difference.
And there's another piece of work that we're doing within the organisation to help build out the knowledge. And we're always mindful that if there's one thing is building out our team's knowledge, but then to actually change the organisation and improve that organisational direction in understanding data and literacy, they've got to see it. They've got to have visibility. They need to understand what exists. If we've got a bunch of reports that are being published across the organisation, then let's make sure that customers know what that is. If we're introducing data visualisation capabilities, let's not just keep it within our team. Let's build out a self-service model so our SMEs and our data teams outside of us have access to that. But it's navigatable, and we're giving them signposts as to where the right sets of data might be for them to use in their dashboards.
Yeah, there's opportunities there that they don't even know about or can't necessarily identify unless they have that understanding. So it helps everyone.
Yeah, and I think for the business stakeholders, there's conversations with the trading teams, with our financial crime teams. It's talking about their problems. What are they trying to solve? What is it that we currently have? What is it that we want to be doing? What they want to be doing in 6 months' time, in a year's time? So we're preparing ourselves. But for engagement, it really always ends up being like, what can we do for you? And this is who we are. Yeah,
bringing it back to what's important to them, how's it going to translate and make sense to them, 100%.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like you are thinking very long term as well with your approach, but how one of the biggest challenges that obviously leaders face is not only having the impact coming in and having an impact and changing things, but actually making sure for the long term things stay effective as best as possible. Is that what's your approach to trying to ensure that happens?
I think for the team, it's staying current with the skills that they've got, but also then thinking a few steps ahead as to what might be coming in. So we've been looking at the way that we've been making data available for our reporting, the way that we've been doing our reporting and moving on to more interactive reports, and now looking at the next stage of analytics and what do we need to have as an organisation. And each step of the way going, right, this is what we're doing right now, but we need to be thinking about where we want to be in a year's time and tying that back to the strategy again. Again, it always ends up being about making sure we're connected. So we're not going off and doing things just because it's something that is interesting for us. It needs to be tied into what value can we add to the organisation, because then that again links back into that whole business and customer buy-in. Everything ends up being connected. So if we think about keeping the team motivated and engaged, it's also thinking about where we want to be, not just what you're doing here right now. So giving them something to aspire to.
Yeah, I think that links into the problems that people are facing around actually attracting talent to an organisation, and then not only attracting but retaining them for the long term, which is obviously what the goal is. You want to be building, not with big turnover of staff, and a big part of that, and especially something we've seen in recruitment over the last year or so, is the switch and focus to how important it is for people to know what the journey is that an organisation is going on and what their role will be within that. You know, what can they contribute, how they can be a part of that, what's the story behind that role and that project that they're going to get involved in. And to be honest, that's not really something that people were talking a hell of a lot about a few years ago, or sort of pre-pandemic. A lot of the focus was elsewhere, and a lot of it was on the tech and the specifics, but actually it's really important for organisations to be able to put that across. And it sounds like, you know, that's a part of your process from the get-go, which I'm sure will help in that process.
Yeah, I think it applies to pretty much every team. It's not something that's unique to data. If you want a team
Yeah.
to be on board with you and be going off in the same direction, you've got to tell them what the direction is. Whether that's a project team or operational team, everybody's got a direction that they're heading towards. If your team don't know about it, how are they going to get on board? How do they understand where they fit into this? Because then you're just limiting their scope of vision, and it just ends up being quite narrow. So I think it's incumbent upon team managers, leaders, to set out that direction and give visibility. Some people might not understand it, and it might not be of interest, but it is my job to make sure that we're talking about it.
Yeah, they've got the opportunity then, and that's where you'll see some people grab hold of it and want to have a big influence, and that's probably naturally how people will progress through the development as well. I mean, when it does come to recruitment, obviously if we're talking about building effective data teams, then a big part of that is who you bring on board. What type of things do you look out for in terms of the characteristics of the individuals that will come in to the way and environment you're talking about and succeed?
I think it goes back to what do we look for? What do I look for in people that will work well? And it's that trust, the respect, the challenge, but also giving them the view of that bigger picture. So when in the interviews that I've been doing over the past year, I've always gone in with, right, this is where we're trying to get to. This is where we are now, but this is the direction that YBS is heading on, and this is our part. This is where we're wanting to go, whether that's capabilities, technologies, projects that we've got coming down the pipeline, to give them a flavour of where we are going, but also being honest to some degree about some of the challenges what we might be facing. Because I don't want somebody coming in here with blinkered thinking, I've sold them a dream, but there are no challenges whatsoever.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
So there has to be some level of, okay, I can help you get through this. Whether that's on a specific set of tasks or whether that's, do you know what, I've got experience from other different organisations and industries, and we've done it in this way, and I can take some of those learnings and we can talk about those.
Yeah, but yeah, really, really important, and it goes back to that, bringing people along on that journey, letting them know from the very beginning, even in the interview scenarios as well. And when we're talking about building for the future, especially, obviously you can't do this all on your own, and you've already referenced the fact that, you know, team managers, bits like that. What's like your criteria, or how do you go about identifying who are those people that will step into those positions and make sure that the message you're putting across isn't diluted, which of course it can be a big risk to a team?
If I look at all of my team managers, the common theme is that I can trust them to be open with me, and that I know that they will take on board the challenge and think creatively about how we're going to deliver this or how to overcome it. And the other part of it is that they care about their people, they care about their teams, and even it doesn't mean that they're just focused on their team as well. They've got enough respect for the team members as a whole.
Yeah.
It's generally having a bit of empathy across everybody's role and what they're going through, particularly in the environment that we've been in for the last 2 years.
100%.
There's so much going on that the work environment's changed, and there was a lot early on about being resilient, and I'm not sure about that word, resilience. It's like, yes, there's a degree that you need resilience, but you also need empathy towards each other and what you might be going through, because nobody ever knows what's going on at another person's head. And I think in this complex work environment role that we're in, you've got to have those softer skills, which again,
that human nature, yeah.
Softer skills, because they really are quite crucial to managing and leading teams.
Yeah, and you can assume that it's like a given, but actually there's lots of individuals that do struggle with that part, and obviously some that do it a lot better. That is really key when you're thinking about leadership, for sure. Definitely. So I suppose to round things off, if you're a data leader that is literally probably at the beginning of this journey, so you've maybe done this a few times as well, but you're at a later stage in this journey. But if you were at the beginning of actually building out a data team, and you wanted to make sure that it was set up for success in the right way for the long term, what would your advice be?
Data teams are really broad, so you've got to think about what's your team. I mean, I'm lucky, and I've got a team that pretty much does end-to-end delivery, so my capabilities are going to be quite broad in terms of the skills that I need. But I'd say it really is about your team. You've got to set it up in the right way. You've got to have the right team leaders that are going to advocate for you, that are going to look after the message that you're sending out, and but also give you that gentle challenge. And there needs to be this tension. There's always this little bit of tension between the direction that we're going in, but also, is there a better way of doing something? So not too much that you don't make progress, but enough to make sure you are always going in that right direction for the right reason.
Yeah, really good point. It's like you say, that having that trust, but also that trust gives them the platform to actually challenge when they feel is right to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think listen to your team, but also give direction. So you've got a job to do, which is leading the team and directing the team, and that's looking at the business and where they want to go and what gaps we're going to have in the space, what opportunities do we have as well. So if we are going on in our world a digital journey, where does data fit in to supporting that digital transformation? Because fundamentally it ends up being quite a lot about data transformation as well, how we consume that data, how we make it available, and how are the team going to support that, and what are you going to be asking of them? So you got to think through yourself. I've got to think through for myself, where are we going? What do I need to do? What does my team need to do? Break that down and have those conversations with the team and start dividing some of those pieces of work out. Some of that might be straight away right now, project activities. Others might be more foundational conversations. But I've got the team who are going to be pulling and helping support me, but I've also got a job to do to help lead them in that direction as well.
Yeah, exactly. Finding that balance. But yeah, really appreciate your time, Vinny, especially half term now as well. We managed to avoid obviously kid coming in during the recording, but yeah, really appreciate you taking the time out. It's been great to hear more about your experiences.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been good to speak to you.